Welcome back to Non Niche. This is Raquel Carpenter here for you. And our next guest is Mr. Jorge Di Urso. He is honestly super sweet and kind. Such a great heart. And it shows in his mixed media and any of his artworks, really. He takes time. He's such an intellectual. Um, Basically, my words are not going to do him justice at all, but I'm super excited that he agreed to do this interview. So let's tune in.
Yeah, you had me worried there for a bit.
I know, it's just like, it might be technology. I've done the same thing too, so
Yeah,
don't worry. So, how are
so
things?
things are good. It was for those who don't know, I'm from Rhode Island, and it was like 75 degrees here today, which is very unusual
Yeah.
for April, mid-April, especially near the coast. So
Yeah.
um, but yeah, today's a hot day. It's supposed to be almost 86 on Saturday. Then it's supposed to get back down to the 60s, but it's climate change is another thing we won't get into tonight.
I, I mean to tell you, my whole family's from Indianapolis, so like
Oh
them
yeah,
already having like springtime right now, it's throwing me completely off. I'm like,
yeah.
okay.
So, but I want to thank you for inviting me, to do this. So it's I'm looking forward to it, and we can, talk a little bit about art and ideas, and whatever else comes our way. But you're the interviewer, so I'm gonna let you take the reins.
Well, we'll definitely get into that, but I guess I wanted to know because I came across your Instagram page and I was just like,
Right.
this can't be like mixed media. Like sometimes like there's digital mixed media and then there's like actually paper collage mixed media. Just outstanding like depth to field like
Hey,
composition
I
that you
appreciate
hold.
that.
And I was just
Uh,
like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to him about that.
well, sometimes, so, mixed media, a lot of times I'll use combinations of collage with pencil or paint or even charcoal, right?
Mhm.
I'm not a pro at charcoal by any means, but and I admire the artists who do that, like charcoal or watercolor
Mhm.
and stuff like that. That's not really the media I work in, but I like to incorporate some of my collage work with some of that stuff. I also I recently posted, a piece that's actually over there in the corner, but where I use spray paint and acrylic and the Polaroid photo and kind of use the light bulb, and so I like stuff like that. One of the artists that I always go back to is Rauschenberg,
Mhm.
and he's probably one of my favorites. He was pre Andy Warhol, and I love Warhol, but Rauschenberg really, I think, taught me that it's okay to change up styles, right?
Mhm.
And it's okay to experiment with found objects,
Yes.
and I actually take my cue with found objects from the poets also, especially poets like Ben Porter and others who really incorporate found objects into their visual poetics, So, but I always refer back to art history, right? And because, we are part of those who came before us, Rauschenberg did a lot of what I see of art, to modern art, and he was always experimenting, always was afraid to get tied down to anyone. So, for instance, when he was doing the screen printing, right, there was an article in the paper, and he wasn't in New York at his studio at that time, but he actually phoned his friend who was at his studio in New York, and he's like, get rid of all my screen printing because I don't want to be known for that,
Right.
because the critics were applauding him for that. So, he was always experimenting, but I don't really have a favorite artist, just like I don't have a favorite musician or band or writer, but there's definitely, certain artists that have definitely influenced me,
Yeah.
But, and I just create, usually when I create, an idea comes to mind or something that I want to express. And writing was always my first love, and I still write. I definitely, I love my poetry's really visual and experimental. I don't post, I've posted a few things on Instagram, but I find that platform isn't really conducive to my type of writing for that, So I use Instagram for my visual art only, and so I find that's a good platform for that. But there's a lot to be said about stills,
Yeah.
with all the music and stuff like that. Like when I go to a museum, I kind of like to look at a piece of art in silence, and I think
Yes.
silence is what is missing from modern society today, So, but I'm not going to get into
Well,
too much crazy.
no, I think that's true.
I'm very I'm 55 years old now, so I turned 55 in December, and I kind of formed some opinions over the years.
I mean, like you live long enough on the earth, you might as well have like a couple, right?
Yeah.
But no,
So,
but like when I go to the museums, like I get kind of it's hard for me to, I wouldn't say focus, but I do have like my noise canceling headphones in because I don't want to hear anybody,
right,
because like I do want to
exactly.
like be engrossed in the art. So sometimes I even have like period playlists depending on like what genre and what era that piece came from. So I can just like
Right.
I feel like that helps me like tap into like whatever the artist was listening to at the time.
Yes.
Kind of like just mentally tell a story, because sometimes it is overcrowded and then you hear people's conversations, or it's loud, or don't let it have like really bad acoustics in there.
Right.
But no, I completely agree. And I did look at your profile, and I would love to see your poems. And unfortunately, we're in like an era where visual needs to be like, if you don't grab somebody's attention like within like 2 seconds, it's just not really reciprocated the way it needs to be.
Definitely.
So so typically I like to put like some of like my personal pieces that I know I spend like a lot of my time in like the highlights in my personal Instagram. But
Right.
maybe look into that, because you have really good poetry. So and
Yeah, it's definitely experimental. It's interesting just, to tell a little bit about myself. So I really been, when I was growing up, I graduated in high school in the mid 80s, before your time.
I mean, like I'm
But
31. I'm not I'm not too far.
oh really?
Yeah.
No, listen, but um and uh so I took art for, preparation for art school, and when you do that, you gather a portfolio together,
Mhm.
right? So if you're prepping to go to art school, you need that. You need a body of work. But one of the things that really kept me from pursuing visual arts was I had obsessive compulsive disorder. I had OCD that was debilitating. It
Oh,
was
wow.
severe. Yeah, and I would, I had to, I would do things, and I'm not embarrassed to talk about it because, back then in the 80s, there wasn't really a name for it yet,
Mm-hmm.
and people didn't know about OCD, but I mean, I would do things like, and the symptoms are gone today, and through a lot of therapy, and I'm not huge on medication, but at that time I needed medication just to be able to go through therapy and work outside of that, to work through it, and so because of the OCD, I wasn't able to do visual art, or painting and sculpture and collage because in my mind it would almost be imperfect. I mean that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the symptoms of OCD is
Right.
just trying to be perfect, and I would do things like because I'm a huge advocate of helping those who suffer from mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what it is. So I would do things like wash my hands 3 times, and it had to be multiples of three, but I couldn't stop at an even number. It had to be an odd number. I mean, it was insane, and it ruled my life. It was debilitating. But writing, it was weird because with my writing, and I still kind of write like that today, although I don't have the symptoms
Right.
anymore, it kind of formed my writing. But
Oh,
the
okay.
visual arts, I mean, I really didn't start producing until, 15, 20 years ago when I had worked through the symptoms and, they lessened and stuff like that. So, and again, I don't have those symptoms today, but, it kind of formed my writing. Um, when you went through high school, I don't know what it's like today. I do have a son, but it was, you studied like the classics of literature, which was mostly Anglo-Saxon white men,
Right.
so they didn't really get it. They didn't really get into, experimental poetry. Everything was basically classical. And then after I graduated from high school, I discovered E. Cummings. And this may sound so random, but reading E. Cummings, I started, wow, this guy does this with syntax, he doesn't capitalize his letters, there's no punctuation. And it just opened up this whole world
Mm-hmm.
for me, right? I'm a huge believer that when you break the rules, you have to know them first.
Yes.
Whether it's music or the visual arts or writing, there's a lot to be said about learning the rules. And especially with art, learning how to compose. For instance, in collage, I took a class at Rhode Island School of Design, which, is pretty well known art school. Um, it's in Rhode Island. It's in Providence, Rhode Island. And and we studied the basics of collage. It was, how to compose collage, uh, the basics of composition, color,
Mm-hmm.
focal point perspective, and stuff like that. And, I don't have a degree from them. My degree is in the humanities, which is basically useless. But so, so I learned the basics of art
Mm-hmm.
through studying others and through, those figures in art history, right? And I still study art today. I mean, on Instagram, you see so much art, and I'm amazed at the talent that's out there.
Yes.
It's really amazing. But, studying art history and studying the greats like Rauschenberg and Warhol, I mean, there's, more modern, but even, the classics. I remember going to museums. Going to museums is important. I remember the first time I saw a Caravaggio painting. I was
Wow.
like, wow,
Yeah.
and you stand back and then you get close and you can see the brush strokes and the little, what some people may call imperfections, I call them perfections because
Mm-hmm.
when imperfections is what makes us human, and just the brush strokes and how he handled shadow and light. And I was absolutely amazed. Um, so I study on a daily basis. I'm looking at art, other artists, whether it's on Instagram or books, internet,
Yeah.
on a daily basis. And it not only influences me, but it gets my creative juices going, you know.
Yeah,
So I think art history is really, really important because you need a reference where which you can, you know, that what you create has to come from. You know what I
exactly.
mean? So I don't know if I'm making that clear or not, but that's really, I'm learning on a daily basis, and I think as an artist, like we're curious about the world,
Yes.
right? We have to be curious about the world and about people. I find myself outdoors a lot. I get a lot of inspiration from nature, and I think you know that's missing from today quite a bit. And my
Dude,
collages tell that story. You know, some
I
of my
agree.
collages.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and then like as Miss Wilberg said, art is a healing process, and I
it
think
is.
as we like for me being personally an artist, um, it is because it's like a healing situation because like you have to. It's like you're finding your own identity with like brush strokes within like a process and then trying to articulate it on a blank canvas, which is
Exactly.
extra intimidating because you want to get your message across, but the whole process is just learning and like going within the flow of things. And when we talk about the imperfections of the brushstrokes, I think that brings more of the human within the artist. And
Definitely.
I too appreciate that as well because I think it's very important because that also stands apart. Like you can have a million of the same paintings, but everybody has their own and like uniqueness to it because it wasn't just printed off by like the same person or
Yeah,
the
you're
same
right.
mechanicism.
Yeah, and um, you know, and that's something that forms my own art practice, whether it's writing or creating music, is just my interpretation of the world, my interpretation of you know what I'm trying to convey. With my collages, I really like to tell stories. I like to find the connections between the different pieces, and it's really kind of close to Dadaism in a way. You know what I mean? Where you try to find unrelated. I love magazines. I love vintage magazines, and that's actually I haven't delved into digital collage yet. You know, I'm kind of
Yeah.
I was the last person I knew to get a cell phone back in the day, you know, and I had to, I had to, I had to ask you today. I'm like, how do I do this Instagram live thing? You
No,
know?
this is like honestly, I didn't start this page. I didn't know how to go on live either, so it was trial and error for me. I was about to send you like if I wasn't explaining it well, I was about to send you screenshots that I took that my friend told me. I was like, I think I can explain this correctly, but no, I'm an old soul at heart, so sometimes I'm still, trying to get used to everything. But no, being somebody said the other day, it's just we live in a world where we're stuck to our phones even when we're outside.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I was just like, they're just missing a lot of the things. They document it, but like, were you present enough to like feel the vibration from it, of the pure
yeah,
enjoyment of being present? And from us artists, it's just very nice to see that with art. And that's one reason why kind of it drew me to your page because I'm like, oh my gosh, this man has like so much depth. And then like you talking about, I was listening to one of your stories, is just how you talk about your mental health and how you've healed yourself. Because yes, back in the day, they didn't have like, they didn't diagnose it. So you've actually
no, it
overcome
is.
that. And that's very powerful within itself. And it speaks through your art a lot.
Yeah, I think that was. I mean, that was a big deal for me. So I was in college, and I was in my early 20s, and I was living off campus with a bunch of guys. And I remember, we're young guys, right, in our 20s, and there was like a pile of dishes in the sink, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta do something about this. So I started cleaning the dishes, and back then there was, do you know who Phil Donahue is? He
Yeah.
was, okay, Phil Donahue, he was like the Oprah back in the day, and Phil Donahue, I don't know how I heard this, and I was in a big, huge Phil Donahue fan, but I was doing dishes. I had him on in the background, and this lady, her name is Judith Davenport, and I don't know if she was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but she wrote a book called The Little Boy Who Couldn't Stop Watching. And that was really the first text that I had read on obsessive compulsive disorder. And when I read that book, I got that book. When I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is me. Like I could identify with the book, right? And they had a name for it, obsessive compulsive disorder. And a lot of times when you name things, it loses its power, right? So in a way, it lost its power, but that book probably saved my life, to be honest with you. So, but yeah, that was an important part. That was an important thing that happened to me. It was so random that I discovered that, but, from there I was able to heal and get well and eventually, be able to just let go and create art, but back to the nature thing and social media. So, my son, when he was younger, I would introduce him to names of butterflies when he was 5 or 6 years old. And he could, and birds, right? So I just happen to love things that fly, So I love birds and butterflies and stuff like that. And, and so because it's the parent's job, as a parent, we, have to introduce our children to nature. And it was a constant push and pull to get them off, as he got older, to get them off the computer and to get out into the natural world. And, but he was also a creative kid because of that. I remember once I walked outside and on the deck of where I was living at the time, I had like this, simple outdoor furniture, and I had a table, and I saw, he took one of the potatoes, like I had a potato in the fridge, and I looked, and there had to be 24 flathead nails sticking out of it. He had taken flathead nails, the stubby kind with the big round heads, and he had just stuck them into the potato. And so I laughed. I wasn't laughing at him. I was laughing because I was happy, And I'll never forget that. And I started thinking about that, and I'm like, he took the potato, right? We don't see a potato, right? It grows in the soil. He lifted that potato, like, from the depths of the soil and raised it to the heights of art. It was one of the most honest and beautiful pieces of sculpture I've still yet to see. And, he transferred that potato into a beautiful work of art. And I could write an essay. I might do that, actually, write an essay on that potato. I know I have a photograph of it somewhere. And, you could talk about, like, things like opening the eyes of the potato and so it can see and stuff like that, and it was just a beautiful moment, But yeah, I think introducing, and I love children's art. I saved all the art, that my son created over the years, and there's such simplicity and honesty in it, the way children interpret the world, it's amazing, and you can learn a lot from that. So, but yeah, parenting is a very active role. So,
never ending.
But yeah, but a lot of my work also kind of mirrors some of my activism activities also. I'm just looking at some of the comments. Sonia's laughing. She loves butterflies, I know that. But, and I've made some really good friends on Instagram. As an activist, I joined Twitter probably 3 years ago, and but then once I wanted to put my art there, someone had suggested Instagram, so I gave it a try, and I've only been on Instagram since October, I think. But I've met some great people. Like the art community is so much different than the activist community. It's just, I find, like,
I can imagine.
yeah, I mean, one has very strong opinions about certain things. One of my specialties as an activist is surveillance and the issue of privacy.
Hmm.
So you get a lot of opinions on stuff, especially when it comes to constitutional rights. The artists are just, most of them are just good people,
Yeah.
and the support I found on social media and the art community is unbelievable. The way we support each other and appreciate each other's works. And I follow a lot of people who are just beginning
Mm.
and are still learning things. Again, I'm still learning. Just because nobody really did that for me when I was
Right.
younger. I didn't really grow up into with an atmosphere where there was a lot of music and art and reading and stuff like that. And no fault of my parents. I mean, some people just aren't that way. Their gifts lie in other areas. But I was a weird kid. I mean, I
Aren't we
just
all?
I
Aren't we
like to
all?
go in my room and just read and create things and stuff like that. So, but I met a lot of really cool people on social media, and I swear off social media as one of those people. I don't want anything to do with it. So, and one of the reasons is because there's a lot. I don't get into it on this
Yeah.
podcast, but there's a lot of privacy issues around social media and government and things like that. So, but on Instagram, it's just us, that's it,
Yeah.
and
And
I'm having fun with it.
well,
So,
that's great. And when you talk about being weird, and I've always I came to like a realization the other day, and I was just like, I thought of like non-niche for I was going through a really rough time in my life, and I just kept on hearing it, and they're like, no, you have to fit in the box if you want to succeed in like the platforms, or if you want to succeed at anything. I was like I always had my hands in stuff. So if I wasn't doing photography, I was doing painting or, drawing or digital stuff. Like I never just stuck to one thing. Like I always wanted to do a lot of things because I feel like we're naturally multifaceted beings. Like you love reading, writing, activism. It's just the support that you do get just being yourself and being your true self. I think that's honestly rare. Unfortunately, in this
it
day and
is.
age, very rare. And I started this page and I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it. And I met so many great people. And, you know, some probably not, but at the same time, like I met more like welcoming people, supportive people. And then all artists want to do is just tell their story and be seen. And, and be supported because sometimes we don't have that support. Like I was not
Right.
lucky enough to have like my mom to support me through a lot of things, but you also provide support to other, starting artists, and then, sharing your knowledge because a little bit of our conversation could easily help somebody else in the same situation.
Yeah, one of the things I totally agree with you, and I'm the same way. So usually when an idea, I mean, William Carlos Williams once said, who's one of the poets that I discovered in high school, who kind of influenced me as wanting to be a writer also.
Hmm.
He said, not in ideas, but in things. That's probably one of his most famous phrases. And, and I agree with you also. I think that usually, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but one of the things that, comes across, like I'll have an idea in my head, right? Or I'm a very visual person, and that influences my writing to a
Hmm.
great degree. But usually it's an idea, it might be a conversation, it might be something I saw today, way that generated more ideas and or maybe a story, maybe a situation. And so usually the way my mind works is, okay, how do I want to make this, right? How do I want to create this?
Right.
And usually the first thing I go to is poetry. You know, can I have this idea come across linguistically with language, right? And if that doesn't work out, because there's a lot of things that you can say better or more efficiently, more effectively with a painting or a collage or, you know, a sculpture. And usually that idea, it comes to me kind of naturally today. How do I want to tell this story? Or how do I want to
Right.
express this, you know, idea or thing, you know? And it's been collage, most times it's collage, a lot of times it's writing. And like yourself, I experiment with a lot of mediums, both photography. You know, I've written plays. I used to be involved with this place called AS220 in Providence, which was really an avant-garde theater.
Okay.
And, you know, I had some readings there, and then I was involved with a group in New York City. So I'd gone there every couple of weeks. And New York City's theater capital of the world, you know, I mean, it's amazing. And so I'd gone there every couple of weeks, and we had like this playwriting workshop group, and actors would do our readings and stuff like that. You know, but I like poetry is really my favorite writing genre. Sometimes I like to write short stories too, and sometimes I'm like, well, this, you know, a painting or a collage will come to my mind instead. You know, I was thinking about this the other day. If I was the only person alive on the planet, right? Besides probably being in a deep depression, I mean, would I still
You're like, oh my God.
would I still create? I would definitely create, but would I be a writer? Probably not, you know, because language is something that we use to communicate the self with the other, right? But I would still paint and I would still make things because I would still want to interpret the world, you know. So I've just been I've actually put down my pen for a couple months now and just been really concentrating on more visual stuff, you know, collages and paintings and stuff like that, and making stuff out of cardboard and whatever I can find. So, but it's fun.
So, speaking of, you have an
Sure.
event coming up.
A what?
You have an
Oh yeah,
event coming up.
yeah. So I have a show in the Plas Gallery in New York City, on the east side. The opening reception is the 21st, and it runs through a week. So I was invited by, you know, the gallery owner to show, you know, several of my collages there. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's
I'm just
exciting.
so New York City, so I live in Rhode Island. It's about 2.5 hours away, driving by car and then catching the MTA into the city. But I'm looking forward to that. So, and I can't wait for it. You know, I can't wait to, you know, see other artworks and meet some people and things. I'm excited.
That
Definitely.
is an exciting thing. That's
Yeah.
awesome. When you showed me that, well, I found it on your Instagram. I was like, I'm gonna screenshot this and put this on there. And then you sent it
Yeah,
to me.
I
I was just like,
appreciate that. You know what you know what I just learned how to do yesterday, because every once in a while, you know, there'd be some artist friends or, you know, people's work that I really like, and you know, I'll do like a lot of likes, you know, and then I'll find it in someone's story, and they're like, "Thank you," you know. So I just learned how to do that yesterday. So, you know, I definitely want to return the favor. I'm still learning about I'm still learning about Instagram. I told my son, so my son now is 17. And so I told him, like, a couple months ago, I'm like, Colton, I'm on Instagram. He's like, he goes, what, with a bunch of teenagers? I'm like, no.
It's like, who are you talking to out there? It's like,
But
that's hilarious. I
and
love them. Like, what? Why?
yeah,
So does he know
he's a
you're on
good kid.
Instagram Live now?
I'm moving up.
I'm sure he's just like, what?
So just recorded, and where can people find this?
So typically, I'm trying to compress all of them because, like I said, I'm not as tech savvy as I used to be. So I'm trying to put the whole video like on YouTube, which was part of my surprise because I'm coming up with a YouTube channel of this.
Oh,
So I've
nice.
been creating like templates, but I want them to be like something aesthetically pleasing, like you are in an art gallery in a way, but just something like to kind of show you off. And but I'm just gonna put like the most important where I feel like because Instagram, not a lot of people has the greatest attention span on here. So when when you put the whole thing, it's just like nobody's listening to the whole thing. So I just kind of put like clips on the feed of like what's important and what kind of stands out and stuff like that. So I've been editing everything down so I can put that on the page.
Right, right.
Yeah. I mean, I have to work with people's attention spans, apparently. So I'm just like, wouldn't it be nice? You can have the whole thing. You just like listen. You're having the, a nice cup of tea or something. They're like, no, they're not going to listen to the whole thing. I'm like, oh, okay.
So someone said thank you on the New York show. So I really appreciate that. Can you read these comments?
Oh, yes.
Can you scroll
So,
down?
yeah. So you click on it and it should open them up. And then you're able to scroll and see who's on there.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
So,
So it's like they know
then,
they know everything about it than us.
so I know all these people, and I call them friends today.
Mm.
So that's great. I just lost the scrolling. I don't know how to get back to it.
You just click
But,
on the comments again and you just move your thumb.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And you can comment
Sonia said,
also.
call your son.
Call your son. I will. I will right after this.
Oh my goodness. I love it. She's like, get your son to help you.
You know what really, here's a confession, what really brought me to Instagram was, and I'm not going to even touch this topic because there's a lot of conflicting opinions around it, but so I was on artificial intelligence, right, which is one of the things I deal with, especially as an activist on surveillance and privacy issues. But, I experiment in AI. I don't use it. It's not the beginning and the end for me, by no means, because I like to get my hands dirty.
Right.
I like that tactileness, that the texture. I like, sometimes for materials for my art, I've used all different kinds of materials. A lot of materials found in nature. I use soil and
That's cool.
water and things like that some of my some of my art, and I like to feel the canvas and the cardboard. I'm just kind of looking around here, seeing what I have. The cardboard, the collage, the paints. I like to work with my hands. I like to make stuff with my hands. So I'm not going to. I'm probably not going to touch that subject. But I use AI. So AI, right? So when
Right.
Dolly first came out, with AI generated images, I started playing around with it, and because I have an interest in artificial intelligence, it was a way for me to learn more about AI and how it works, and I would use it for certain things like translating, you know, especially language, or putting it into kind of binary format. So, and then feeding that into AI to see what I could come up with and stuff
Right.
like that. And it's experiment. I mean, when it first came out, I was like, oh my god. But I mean, the honeymoon kind of wore off really quick for me. So, and you know, and AI is, it's still a tool. I think we're still learning about that. And, again, I don't use it for a lot, but I like to experiment with it sometimes. And a lot of it is just, again, it's experimentation or learning more about artificial intelligence. And someone had posted, well, AI is not bad. And, well, my response was, well, what does that mean? Like, AI is neither bad nor good. It's not a sentient being. Um, but as an activist, I deal with some of the nefarious things that
Right.
AI is used for, facial recognition, and there's racial disparities with that, with facial recognition. There's things like autonomous drone warfare, and particularly, again, in the areas of surveillance and privacy issues. So I kind of look at artificial intelligence not from the point of view of art history, but more from the point of view of the history of technology and the history of surveillance and things like that. So, but yeah, but I do have some activist activities coming up soon that, I'm not going to be on Instagram as much as I am over the next few weeks. So, just because I need to make a presentation about that, and constitutional surveillance of Americans ever since the signing of the Patriot Act, and
Gotcha.
which Edward Snowden uncovered, the NSA spying on Americans and stuff like that. So, but that's another topic for another show. I could
Well, I
go
mean,
on and on about that.
well, that's a part of you, and that's why you're here to tell your story. But no, I mean, when I saw a woman on TikTok who inputted a chip in her wrist to open doors, and there was a chip that you can put in your wrist to like go to Disney World where you can just scan your wrist
Yeah,
and it's like a ticket.
no,
And I was just like, we have come too far.
we have some
I
people.
was like, but like I said, but no, I totally get it. And but sometimes when like AI and Chat GBT, I feel like there's not a good gray area that's being presented out. Like there's either like a black or white situation. There's like nothing in between. But really, it's just a lot of information that's already been gathered by what we've already presented because we've opened ourselves up to it, mind you. But that's all I would. But that's all I would say about it. But at the, you know, I don't know. And then there's like the debate between like AI and taking the authentic organic ness away from different artists, and it's just not the same. And they're like, oh well, you can create this on AI and it's this cost, but like if somebody actually built it with their hands, is that honestly they could charge you up to like 3 times more because they put their blood, sweat, and tears. That's labor plus material
Yeah.
cost. So you're lucky that they still priced it the same way. But no, I totally understand. But it can get
Even
both ways.
Yeah, I mean, aside from that, as far as my creative process, one of the things I've been thinking about, because there's a lot of cool digital or analog collage out there, right? And again, I'm 55. I'm getting older. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. My hands aren't as steady. Like I hate cutting circles when I make collages, but I use a lot of them, and somehow it comes out okay. But so I've been thinking about, probably looking into that a little bit, make, exploring digital collage, and I'm sure there's a point where, I'll experiment with it and stuff like that.
But
So,
it's nice too.
so I'm just looking at some of the, thank you, Janet. I'm not always kind.
I just bring out
No,
people's kindness. I just have like,
and and Serena said, "Congrats on your show. Thank you." She is quite a photographer, and she makes really beautiful photography. You know, I mean, photography is a whole other art form. I admire those that really know how to use a camera. I don't. Um, I'm learning, so I just one of my latest pieces, I took a Polaroid of a chair and I put that into a bigger piece, and it seemed to work. But I mean, Polaroid cameras are fun, and I was like, when you wait for the film to develop, it looks like an authentic Polaroid film. I had received the Polaroid camera when I was 5 or 6 years old for my birthday, and it's kind of like going back in time, and there's something about vintage look,
oh
photograph.
yeah.
But Serena really does some beautiful photography, and all these people here, I
They want to
you
show
know,
their support.
yeah, it's really cool, and I mean it's pretty neat. I got stuck on the comment section again.
It's okay.
See if I can. Do you mind if I look at these?
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, speak.
Hello.
Um, yeah, I have a Polaroid camera, and then I have like one of those old school ones that my dad used to have, where
Right.
you just look down at it. And I took a lot of film classes when I went to college, so I learned how to like develop my film and created my own like dark room. It was just really fun, and like I said, when it's basically when you put more time into it, it brings more of like a human hand and a little
Yeah.
bit more authenticity with it in the organic style. But that's just me personally. Like photography, any type of art, really, it's just like it's that person's uniqueness anyway. But when I do see like a Polaroid or anything that's like nostalgia, and I embrace it a little bit more because I don't know, it's just like it's like a mix with like grain, and then it's like a little surprise, like that you took a picture of it, but like you have to develop it, you just nurture it a little bit more, so it's just really nice.
Yeah, and that's one of the arguments I hear a lot comparing, to the technological advance of
Mm-hmm.
AI, when it comes to the art aspect that, you know, they compare it to, painters' reactions when the camera, when people started making photographs, right, or creating
Mm-hmm.
photographs. And I just think that's a poor argument. It's not the same thing. One of the best books I ever read was, and it was by an author. I think he wrote this book in the mid '70s, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really interesting is hardly anyone hears about Alfred Toffler anymore. And he wrote a book. He actually coined the term future shock. So, in future shock is basically how human beings become disoriented in the face of an ever increasingly advancement of technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're living in an age right now where technology is advancing so rapidly as time goes by that we can't keep up with it as human beings, and in a sense we do become disoriented. And even though he wrote this book in the '70s, I mean, I think it's more true today than it ever was. And we are truly living in an era of future shock. I mean, as an activist, I deal with that, on legislative issues where, it takes forever for bills to be passed in the House and the Senate on a state level and a national and a federal level. And even legislation can't keep up with the advancing technology,
Yeah.
So, but
Rapid.
yeah, it's really, I mean, yeah, there's definitely some uh, scary things about it, what's happening in the world today. I mean, I'm not a doomsayer at all. I'm just not built that way. But it's just one of the things I deal with as an activist. So,
Yeah.
again, so you're probably gonna post these in clips.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna
Yeah.
do
I don't
clips.
want you to post. I don't want you posting the whole thing. I feel kind of tongue tied tonight. I'm a little nervous.
No, you're doing a great job. I couldn't tell at all. So no, I'm posting clips on the feed and then on YouTube when I watch that, hopefully by this weekend. It'll just be like the full interview. And yeah. So because YouTube, it's more accepted for longer version content instead of kind of quick to the point.
Right.
But no, so we have like 8 minutes left. So what would your last words be to all the artists out there of bringing encouragement to keep going?
Um. Yeah. Again, dogs.
No, you're
Can you hear the dogs?
just a little bit, but
Right.
I have a highway behind me.
But as far as and that could be, again, nobody really. I didn't grow up in an atmosphere where, my artistic creations or artistic aptitudes were really, pushed. So I just think it's important to be kind. To be kind to those artists who are just beginning, to encourage them, support them on social media. I mean, I support the artists that, again, just getting started on social media, and they have very little followers, and it's sincere though,
Right.
and I just encourage, young people, and, just, I'm not one of these people that, and this is a pet peeve of mine, and it doesn't bother me if I call people out on this. I don't call specific people on it. But, you don't follow someone and then unfollow them,
Oh
and
no.
not like that.
Not that
And I mean, it's not cool, like as artists, we can tell lies, right? But there's truth in our lies. I believe it's Picasso that said something along that line, and also in the movie V for Vendetta, right? So
Right.
we, present to the world certain lies, but there's truth in those lies, you know. But as artists, like, we have to be honest, right? We
Right.
have to be, and I always support. As an activist, I tend to support the underdog. As an artist, I tend to support those who again, who are learning. Because you know what? There's a lot of truth. Like, sometimes there's more truth in the artist who is just beginning, right? And who's exploring and making their way and finding their stuff than there is with people with, 15,000 followers,
Yeah,
you
that's true.
know?
Yeah.
It's just, so again, it's like, it reminds me of the potato story with my son, and there was so much truth in what that little boy created. And it just, you know what? To put it in a nutshell, just be kind to your fellow artists, right? I think we're the most important people in the world. I really sincerely believe that, because, especially in today's age, like, we bring a lot of beauty, we bring truthful interpretation to the world, we bring love, and we bring honesty. Our creations can be totally insane. I like to make crazy stuff, right? And I like to critique modern society, especially the American military and industrial complex. But you can also do that in a truthful way that's beautiful and that's universal, so that people can understand it. But it just, be kind to your fellow artists. There's a lot in our world today that's really ugly, and we can bring a lot of beauty to that world. So
I agree. And I think that's the best thing because kindness is unfortunately a rarity in the world. And as artists, that's our just us being vulnerable and we're sharing a piece of ourselves. So I love that you said that for, just the last bit because all we need in the world is just to be kind and treat people how you would want to be treated at the end of the
that's
day,
it. Yeah.
But no,
So
I I'm so glad that I got to get to know you better and
Yeah,
have this interview with you. And, you know, congratulations on your show. I'm very
thank
excited.
you.
And I hope
And thank you.
I hope
Yeah,
somebody films it or something where
yeah.
I can see
I'm
it.
gonna take some videos, some photos of it, sure, and share it. And I'd like to thank everyone who joined the show, and again, the encouragement from a lot of the people who got on this Instagram live, and say congratulations for the show, and stuff like that. So I really appreciate it. I really, really do from the bottom of my heart. And Raquel, thank you for inviting me here tonight. I was thinking about things. I'm like, I'm just going to shoot this on a whim. So it may have been a lot of stuttering and pausing and stuff like that. But what I said tonight again is, I think, honest. So, and this is fun.
Well, I had a
Thank
blast,
you,
and I'm glad.
Janet.
Jan, I'm gonna follow you back. I saw that you followed me, so I'm gonna follow you. I think I followed you back. I'm gonna double check, but no, everybody's been so sweet, and I hope everybody tunes in next Thursday for our next artist. But as always, I'm very grateful to have you here, and congrats on your show. And we need more artists and just people in general, like you. So I appreciate you spending and sharing your time, because I know the prep of a show is kind of crazy. So I appreciate
Yes.
your time a lot.
Thanks,
No
Raquel.
problem.
Everyone, good
All
night. All right.
right. Bye.